In today's episode of Beyond the Pages, we'll dive into the first book of the Empyrean series, a global sensation and a fan favorite for its captivating adult fantasy themes. This widely acclaimed novel is none other than Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Set in a brutal war college where survival is anything but guaranteed, the story follows a protagonist who was never meant to be part of this ruthless world, yet has no choice but to fight for her place among deadly warriors and even deadlier dragons. Violet Sorengale climbs the stairs to her mother's office, General Sorengale, on Conscription Day, the day when 20-year-olds from across the Kingdom of Navarre select their branch of military service to defend against invasion attempts by the Griffin Riders of the Kingdom of Paromiel. These candidates can choose a quadrant based on their abilities. Violet's sister Mira is a renowned dragon rider, while their mother is the general of Basgeth War College. Violet overhears Mira arguing with their mother about Violet's poor chances of survival if she pursues a place in the Riders Quadrant. However, General Sorengale is adamant that Violet must join the Riders Quadrant. Violet enters the office and embraces Mira, who insists that their mother allow Violet to join the Scribes instead, a faction focused on theoretical knowledge where physical combat is not required. Violet has spent most of her life training for the Scribe Quadrant and is thus ill-prepared for the physical and psychological demands of the Riders. General Sorengale blames her late husband for sheltering Violet in the library due to her physical frailty caused by an illness that nearly killed her in infancy. She demands that Violet join the Riders for prestige, reminding her daughters that their father is dead and no longer has a say in Violet's future. Mira warns that Violet will likely die during the trials and also mentions Brennan, their older brother who died alongside his dragon during the Tyrrish Rebellion, but their mother remains unmoved. Later, Mira helps Violet reorganize her pack and gives her protective clothing to help her survive the trials, including a nearly impenetrable corset lined with dragon scales. Mira removes several books from Violet's bag, including a book of folklore from their father. This book is dear to Violet as it describes the Vaenen, evil beings who forcibly corrupt magic and create creatures called wyverns. However, these are considered myths and no one believes in them. Mira also warns Violet that other cadets will try to kill her because of her family name. She advises her to find Dain Atos, an old friend and a second-year rider cadet who leads a squad. Violet had always wanted to join the Scribe Quadrant, but with her mother's decision made for her, she mentally prepares for the challenges ahead. She used to be childhood friends with Dain and has secretly harbored a crush on him for some time. She hopes to find him soon, but before any of that, she must first pass the test to enter the Riders Quadrant. Violet surveys the towering entrance of the Riders Quadrant. At the top is a narrow parapet she must cross. She notices that one of the rider candidates is the child of a separatist, identified by the dragon-given tattoo on his arm, marking him as the offspring of a rebel. All separatist children are forced to conscript into the Riders as punishment for their parents' rebellion. Mira warns Violet about Xaden Riosen, the son of the great betrayer who led the rebellion years ago. To atone for his father's actions, Xaden has sworn an oath to the Empire and is now a high-achieving third-year rider. However, Mira believes he will kill Violet at the first opportunity. Violet joins two other trialists, Rhiannon and Dylan, as they climb the tower. At the top, three cadets prepare them to cross. Violet is immediately attracted to one of them, but quickly realizes he is none other than Xaden. The two confront each other. Xaden reminds Violet that her mother executed his father, while Violet counters that his father killed her brother. Their tension is interrupted when Dylan screams as he slips from the rain-soaked parapet, plummeting to his death. Earlier, Violet had exchanged one of her boots with Rhiannon's, which had better grip to prevent slipping. Xaden notices this act of kindness towards a mere stranger and appears momentarily puzzled by it. Rhiannon promises to wait for Violet on the other side and begins to cross. Violet looks out across the storm that has descended since they first climbed the tower. When she hesitates, the candidate behind her, Jack Barlow, threatens to shove her. As she crosses, she recites the history of Navarre to calm herself. She looks back to see what Jack is doing and watches as he throws another candidate from the top of the parapet before turning his attention to her. She tries to run but slips, nearly falling. She recovers as Jack mocks her from behind. Violet jumps to safety where Rhiannon and two older cadets are watching. She pulls out a dagger, holding Jack off just long enough to remind him of the rules. He cannot intentionally kill her in the presence of a higher-ranking cadet. Now that they have crossed the parapet, they are being observed. The older cadets agree, warning Jack that he will be executed if he harms Violet. He vows vengeance. Violet soon meets Dain, who seems surprised to see her here, as she was supposed to be be in the Scribe Quadrant. He promises to add both Violet and Rhiannon to his squad. He then takes Violet to his room so she can wrap her knee, which has become slightly dislocated due to a weakness in her joints. Dane also demonstrates some of the abilities he has as a dragon rider, including minor telekinesis. He and Violet flirt before he tries to devise a way for her to escape the rider's recruitment, insulting her in the process by referencing her poor health. They reach the courtyard and enter from different directions to avoid drawing attention to the fact that they were together. Violet joins Rhiannon and catches sight of Xaden again. She wonders what his signet power is, the special ability a rider develops after bonding with a dragon. Signet powers range from healing to elemental control and reflect the rider's innermost personality and ambitions. Commandant Panchek addresses the cadets and outlines the many threats they will face. Only a quarter of them are expected to survive the next 3 years. Once he leaves, the wing leaders, section leaders, and squad leaders begin sorting through the new recruits. While Dane is a squad leader, Xaden is a wing leader. Although the squads are primarily composed of first-year cadets, some second and third-year riders remain unchosen for leadership roles. Dane's squad is ordered to switch to the fourth wing, which Xaden oversees. After the cadets are assigned to their groups, Xaden begins a rousing speech that is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of 8 dragons, an event that both awes and terrifies the cadets. Several cadets attempt to flee in fear but are incinerated by the dragons for their cowardice. Xaden ends his speech with a warning against such shameful behavior. As the dragons approach, Violet tries hard not to show fear, knowing that dragons can sense it. She becomes mesmerized by one of the largest dragons she has ever seen, captivated by its massive size and striking navy scales. This moment is significant as it marks Violet's first real encounter with the creatures she will eventually have to face during the Threshing. Threshing is the event, set to take place in a few weeks, where riders must bond with a dragon. She wonders who this navy dragon is bonded to. The next day, the cadets gather to listen as a scribe reads the names of the dead, a ritual that takes place every morning during roll call. Dane instructs Sawyer, a cadet from the previous year, to guide the first years. Dane intercepts Violet, and she questions him about the transfer of his squad. He admits that Xaden advocated for the change because he wants to kill her personally. Dane warns her that Xaden's dragon Skyle is an extension of her rider's viciousness. Realizing that the massive navy dragon she saw belongs to Xaden, Violet asks Dane about his own signet power. She learns that Dane has the ability to see a person's most recent memories. Violet departs for class but catches Xaden's eye as she walks through the halls. He taunts her just as Dane appears behind her. Fearing an attack, Violet quickly runs away. All cadets attend a battle brief, where Violet recognizes one of the scribe professors with whom she was originally supposed to train. The instructors describe a griffin attack from the Paromial kingdom that occurred the night before. Paromial desires Navarre's resources and is displeased with trade agreements, leading them to ransack the countryside. Dragons use magic channeled through their riders to maintain protective wards around Navarre. These wards prevent non-dragon magic from functioning, but they occasionally fail. The professors prompt the first-year cadets to ask questions, and Violet deduces that the dragons knew the wards were weakening before the fight began. Xaden determines that the attackers were searching for something specific, but no one can identify what. As the briefing concludes, one of the professors implies that more than just third-year riders may soon be called into active duty. The cadets proceed to sparring lessons. Growing increasingly anxious as she watches the cadets fight, Violet worries about her lack of training and physical fragility. She makes a deal with Rhiannon and Sawyer, promising to help them with history if they assist her with hand-to-hand combat. Rhiannon wins her bout easily, and Violet is called to the mat to spar against Imogen, a second-year cadet, and the daughter of a separatist. The two exchange snide remarks before engaging in combat. Imogen attempts to kill Violet with a dagger, but Violet's dragon-scale corset saves her life. Using her uncanny speed, Imogen tackles Violet, breaking her arm before she finally yields. Dane carries Violet to the healer quadrant, where she recognizes many of the healers from her frequent visits due to past injuries. She reflects on the power of mending, which allows riders to restore objects and people to their original states. Her brother had been a mender before his death. A healer named Winifred suggests calling for Nolan, a skilled mender, but Dane adamantly refuses. He believes that if Violet's injuries are not healed, she can be sent to join the scribes instead. Despite Dane's objections, the healers send for Nolan anyway. Dane and Nolan argue over whether Violet's wounds should be mended. Dane tries once more to persuade Violet to transfer to the scribe quadrant, but she dismisses him. When Nolan finally mends Violet's shoulder, she faints from the pain. That night, she returns to the dorms where Rhiannon reassures her that she will help Violet learn combat before the formal matches begin in 2 weeks. As Violet gets into bed, she discovers a note from her sister and a notebook that once belonged to Brennan. The book opens with a letter to Mira in which Brennan promises to document everything he has learned about becoming a rider. As she reads, Violet uncovers a crucial detail. The instructors decide match pairings in advance, and she learns where to find the list of combatants. Late at night, Violet walks along the river, intending to pick berries to dry for poison making. She climbs a tree and spots Imogen and Xaden walking beneath her, but she cannot hear them over the roar of the river. More riders arrive, all of whom wear black cloaks and bear rebellion tattoos. It is a direct violation for more than 3 of these marked cadets to gather at once. She lowers herself onto a different branch to eavesdrop. Xaden speaks to the younger cadets about survival, and the gathered riders promise to help them develop the skills needed to make it through graduation. Initially, Violet finds herself supportive of the group, but when one of them asks, "When do we get to kill Violet Sorengale?" Xaden insists that he alone will handle her. This sparks a debate among the rebels' children about whether Violet should be punished for her mother's sins. Violet waits for them to leave before climbing down, only to be grabbed by Xaden. His signet power, shadow wielding, allows him to hide and disorient others. He mocks her weakness, but she impresses him by throwing a dagger with remarkable accuracy. He suggests she show off her precision to Jack, who has been tormenting her since the moment on the parapet. Then he asks if she plans to report the gathering. When she promises not to, he departs, stating that if she keeps her word, he will owe her a favor. The next morning, Dane walks Violet to her breakfast duty. He expresses concern about her ability to handle the sparring challenges scheduled for that afternoon. She tries to reassure him, but does not reveal that she already knows the name of her opponent, thanks to the hints in Brennan's notebook. When Dane advises her to avoid Jack, she is struck by how different his approach is from Xaden's. Violet leaves him and heads to the kitchens, where she discreetly sprinkles poison onto her challenger's food. Later, the cadets attend a lesson about dragons, during which a professor warns them about the upcoming Threshing, when the dragons will select riders to bond with. When the professor mentions that 100 dragons are prepared to bond, it sparks a discussion about the declining number of bonds each year and speculation that this issue is negatively affecting the wards. After class, Violet and the professor share a private moment to discuss Brennan, and he compliments her intelligence and compassion. In the sparring room, Dane warns Violet that her opponent is friends with Jack and intends to kill her, as she is viewed as a liability. Jack attempts to mock her, but she throws a dagger close enough to startle him. He once again vows vengeance, and Dane expresses frustration at her outburst. Violet is called to the mat, where her opponent, a cadet named Oren, appears ill. He taunts her, but she manages to outmaneuver him, and he begins vomiting on the mat. The supervising professor declares the bout over. Over the next few weeks, Violet continues to poison her challengers in various ways to gain an advantage, and by September, she feels well established. However, when one of her sparring partners goes to the healers before their match, Xaden volunteers to fight her instead. Violet fills with dread as Xaden, one of the Academy's most ferocious fighters, approaches. Dane tries to intervene, but Xaden uses his rank to remind Dane of his lower standing. During their sparring match, Xaden gradually disarms Violet and repeatedly offers her insights on how to use her small stature to her advantage. That night, Dane sneaks her into his room, massages her sore muscles, and they discuss how dragons can read their riders' minds. Dane confesses that he reported Xaden, Jack, and another cadet to Colonel Markham, a lead scribe, for harassing Violet and wanting to kill her. However, when Dane once again urges Violet to join the scribes, she lashes out. He describes the horrors of the Threshing, warning that she could be killed by either dragons or her peers, and that he will be forced to watch it happen. But Violet, angered by his doubts, storms out. The cadets survey the gauntlet, a vertical obstacle course they must ascend. This exercise eliminates weaker candidates and determines the order in which squads will be presented to the dragons for initial impressions. As the cadets study the course, one of their squad members mocks Violet, but others defend her. When someone implies that she is sleeping with Dane for preferential treatment, Rhiannon sets the record straight about their friendship. The cadet apologizes for his assumption, and they begin their first of 9 practice attempts to master the course. When it is her turn, Violet recites facts about dragons to calm her nerves. Partway through the course, one of her peers falls to her death. The next day, Violet volunteers to ceremonially burn her fallen squad mates' belongings in accordance with school tradition. Afterwards, she wanders the hallways alone, reflecting on Dane's offer to join the scribes. She spots Xaden with 2 other cadets and hides, but his shadow-wielding talent allows him to sense her presence. Xaden dismisses the other cadets and approaches Violet. They exchange barbs before she admits her struggles with the gauntlet, as some sections are too tall for her to complete. Having survived 2 months, she hopes she can continue to succeed, but her squad mate's death and her difficulties with the course have shaken her confidence. Xaden advises her to think more creatively about the challenges in front of her before leaving. At their final practice session, Rhiannon and Violet struggle to find a way for Violet to complete the gauntlet, but her small stature repeatedly hinders her progress. The next day, Dane escorts his squad to the course as Violet and Rhiannon joke to keep their spirits high. While passing through a tunnel, Dane makes one last attempt to convince Violet to transfer to the scribes, but she rejects the offer, insisting that she has changed. When it is her turn for the gauntlet, Violet takes an alternative approach to conquering the final 2 sections, using a dagger to climb the last portion, severely injuring her hands in the process. Although she successfully completes the course, one of the wing leaders, Amber Mavis, accuses her of cheating. However, having prepared extensively for the scribe quadrant, Violet cites the rulebook and successfully argues that her decision was legal. The surviving cadets are brought to a private training ground where dragons await to judge them as they walk by. Any cadets the dragons disapprove of are expected to be incinerated. Through gossip, the squad learns that an additional dragon has joined the presentation, an extremely rare feathertail. The feathertail breed is known to be non-violent and has never bonded with a rider. A wing leader gives the cadets advice on how to behave in front of the dragons before sending them into the training grounds. The dragons are massive and awe-inspiring, but Violet maintains light-hearted chatter as instructed. At the end of the line, they spot the golden feathertail dragon, which is noticeably small in stature. The cadets debate whether it is healthy or normal, but Violet defends it. Some of her squad mates insult her and continue speaking disparagingly about the golden dragon. As they make their way back to the school, one of their squad mates is incinerated for being too indecisive. The cadets maintain their composure, but Violet lashes out at a peer for making a rude comment about the deceased cadet. She then turns around to find 2 green dragons investigating her, blowing air at her injured hands and chest. They sniff the dragon scales of her armor, and she introduces herself as Mira's sister. The dragons return to their perches and she rejoins her squad, continuing the walk. When another cadet speaks badly about Violet, she is set on fire. October 1st marks the day of the Threshing, when the first-year cadets must enter the valley and attempt to bond with a dragon. A professor instructs them to follow their instincts, as dragons that have pre-selected riders will guide them through the valley using their emotions. Rhiannon and Violet briefly discuss which dragons they hope to bond with. Violet spots Jack, who makes a threatening gesture in her direction. She knows she will either leave with a dragon or die trying. After hugging Rhiannon goodbye, the cadets scatter into the valley. After several hours of hiking, Violet encounters multiple dragons but feels no emotional connection to any of them. She climbs a tree to survey where dragons and fellow candidates are gathered. When she descends, she overhears Jack walking with 2 of his cohorts. Realizing they are hunting the small golden dragon to kill it, she rushes ahead to warn it but twists her ankle on the way. She reaches the dragon before they do, but her attempts to shoo it away are unsuccessful as Jack arrives. As they approach the golden dragon, Violet steps between them, revealing herself. Jack and his men advance with weapons drawn, but Xaden suddenly speaks, revealing himself and his navy dragon, Skyle. Jack cites the rules stating that dragon riders cannot interfere with the Threshing, implying that Xaden cannot stop them from attacking. The men rush toward Violet. She throws a dagger into Jack's shoulder, and he orders the other 2 cadets to kill her before fleeing. Violet and the golden dragon fight off the remaining cadets, with Xaden shouting warnings as Skyle becomes increasingly enraged. Violet knocks out the cadet named Orin, but the other is about to kill her when they are both stopped by the arrival of an exceptionally rare black dragon. The black dragon telepathically commands Violet to step aside before incinerating the man who nearly killed her. The dragon instructs Violet to kill Orin, but she refuses, believing it to be wrong. He then tells her to bandage her wounds before ordering her to climb onto his back. Only then does she realize that he has chosen to bond with her. To her shock, he lowers himself to make it easier for her to mount. He introduces himself as Tyrnianak, or Tern, before taking taking off into the sky. Tairn flies too fast, causing Violet to slip and fall into freefall. However, he catches her before she hits the ground, then tosses her back into the air so she can remount. This time, he flies more gently and instructs her on how to ride, using magic to keep her secure. Performing a series of aerial acrobatics, he impresses both dragons and humans in attendance before explaining that he chose her because she saved the golden dragon and demonstrated courage and fortitude. As they enter the training grounds, the other dragons show deference, and the golden dragon catches up to them. Tairn helps Violet dismount by extending his leg, and she approaches the high-ranking officials to report their bond. General Sorengale does not look at Violet as she arrives. Violet gives the roll keeper Tairn's true name, but is shocked when the golden dragon provides her own name, Andarnarum or Andarna, while also communicating in her thoughts. Tairn and Andarna urge her to announce both names. When she does, the crowd erupts in confusion, as no rider has ever bonded with two dragons before. The generals argue over the correct protocol for a dually bonded rider. Meanwhile, Jack receives medical attention nearby and yells at the medics when they suggest surgery. He also shouts at Violet, but upon learning that Tairn bonded with her, he becomes visibly frightened. Later, when Violet is alone, she asks Professor Cowrie if any rider has ever bonded with two dragons simultaneously. He confirms that she is the first, but states that the decision ultimately rests with the dragon leaders. Tairn instructs Violet to stay with Xardan as the dragons depart the valley to discuss the matter. Violet reunites with her friends Rhiannon, Rhydock, and Sawyer, all of whom have successfully bonded. Dane arrives and pulls her aside, insisting that she choose Andarna if she is forced to pick between the two dragons. She refuses. Dane then reveals that Tairn and Scale are a mated pair and warns her that if she chooses Tairn, Xardan will kill her. He forces Violet to relive the events of the valley, reading her recent memories. Xardan steps out of the shadows as Dine begins to insinuate that he manipulated the Threshing. Defending himself, Xardan states that while Sgail called for Tairn, Tairn bonded with Violet of his own volition. Xaden then asks Dane if he would have broken a rule to save Violet's life. When Dane answers no, Violet is deeply hurt. The dragons return, and Xaden orders Dane into formation before warning Violet that she places too much trust in Dine. He also cautions her that Tairn's bonds run deep. When Tairn's last rider perished, he nearly died from grief. Because Tairn is bonded to Sgail, who is bonded to Xardan, Violet's survival is now crucial, as her death could be life-threatening to Tairn as well. Xardan also warns that unbonded riders may try to kill her to convince Tairn to bond with them instead, as this bond is still new. Violet rejoins Tairn and Andarna as they return. General Melgren, leader of the army, announces that the double bond will stand, as the dragons have discussed the matter in their own territory. The ceremony concludes with the dragons bestowing relic marks on their riders, tattoos that signify their bond. Afterward, Dane kisses Violet in an attempt to rekindle their connection, but she is surprised to feel no passion in the gesture. Now that she is officially a dragon rider, Violet is given a private room. The next morning, she and Rhiannon walk together, and after some light teasing, Violet admits that she felt no spark when Dane kissed her. They meet up with Rhydock and go to breakfast, where the other first-year cadets quickly offer Violet their seats and greet her warmly. They also notice Jack being ostracized by their peers. The rest of the Flame Squad joins them, including Imogen, who explains that Tairn's presence has caused a significant power shift among the cadets. As they gossip about the other bonds, the first years learn more about their higher-ranking squad members. Imogen instructs Violet to meet her for strength training, and Violet realizes that her new connection to Xaden is no secret. The first years attend flight training. Tairn arrives, but Andarna stays away as her small frame prevents her from carrying Violet's weight. While Violet and Tairn fly, they engage in playful telepathic banter. Violet insists that Tairn refrain from using magic to keep her on his back, but she repeatedly falls off, forcing him to dive to catch her each time. That night, Dane intercepts Violet as she heads to the gym. They discuss her struggles with flight before he apologizes for the kiss, emphasizing the strict rules against physical relationships that could disrupt the chain of command. Their conversation is interrupted by Imogen, prompting Violet to leave for training. As the two women exchange barbs, Violet suspects that Imogen is romantically interested in Xaden. Violet is assigned to archive duty, where she returns books for commanding officers and collects their new requests. The task reminds her of her time training as a scribe, but she gradually feels less attached to the archives. She reunites with her old friend Jacinia, and they catch up before Violet hands her the next request list. While browsing, Violet searches for a beloved childhood book, but is surprised to find that it is missing, an odd occurrence given the archive's extensive collection. At breakfast, Violet learns that Sawyer is the first of the newly bonded cadets to display his signet power. The older students offer the first years a warning. Once they begin channeling magic from their dragons, they must manifest their signet within 6 months or risk dying from built-up magic. Despite her training, Violet still struggles to stay on Tern's back during flight lessons. Tern teases her about her conflicting feelings for Xaden. When Dane arrives at the flight field, Tern grows angry and threatens him. In private, Dane yells at Violet for not being able to stay on Tern. They argue, but Violet lists the steps she is taking to improve her strength. When Dane references his feelings, Violet lashes out, declaring that they will only ever be friends because he does not believe in her potential. She storms away into a courtyard where one of the newly bonded cadets begins to manifest his signet power. Mind reading, an outlawed ability deemed too dangerous for anyone to have. Xaden uses his shadows to silence the cadet, and Professor Carr, a magic specialist, executes him. That night, Violet dreams about her father before Tern wakes her telepathically as Oren and 6 other cadets break into her room to murder her. Tern tries to coach her as 6 of them attack while the 7th flees. They overpower her and Oren prepares to kill her. Violet's door opens, but she cannot see who is there. Then suddenly something strange happens. Everything is frozen. That's right, the smaller dragon Andarna has frozen time for everyone except Violet. Seizing the opportunity, Violet frees herself from Oren's grip and makes her way to the door, where she sees Xaden, frozen but clearly enraged. Andarna resumes time. The unbonded cadets, upon seeing Xaden, immediately drop their weapons, while Oren attempts to justify the murder attempt. Xaden uses his shadows to choke the other 6 cadets to death before slitting Oren's throat. High-ranking cadets arrive to assess the situation, and as the adrenaline fades, Violet goes into shock. The other riders, all of whom bear the marks of Rebel's children, clean up the scene and leave Violet with Xaden. Xaden helps her put on her shoes and leads her to an underground tunnel so they can speak to Tern. They emerge onto the training field and wait for Tern, Scale, and Andarna to arrive. Xaden confronts Tern, demanding to know what happened in Violet's room. To Violet's surprise, Skyle speaks to her telepathically, a side effect of her being Tern's mate. Andarna explains to Violet that feather-tailed dragons can give their powers to humans, which is why only adult dragons bond with riders. Violet then realizes that Andarna is not a special breed of dragon, but a baby dragon. Because young dragons are untrained, humans can exploit and drain their power, killing them in the process. After revealing this information, Tern and Andarna swear their riders to secrecy. As the dragons depart, Xaden asks how the unbonded cadets managed to get into Violet's room. She hesitates to tell him that she recognized the person who fled, suspecting that they were the one who unlocked her door. The younger cadets discuss the murder attempt over breakfast before attending the morning death roll call. While everyone is still in formation, Xaden pulls a rebel's child named Liam from another squad and places him in Violet's squad. Violet protests, insisting that she does not need a bodyguard. During morning announcements, Commandant Panchek declares that a violation of the Rider Code has occurred. Xaden steps forward and recounts the events of the previous night, then accuses a fellow wing leader, Amber, of helping the cadets break into Violet's room. This is the same wing leader who had previously accused Violet of cheating when she climbed the gauntlet. Dane tries to defend Amber, but Violet insists that Xaden is telling the truth as she saw Amber herself. Dragons arrive to observe the proceedings. Dane orders Violet to share her memory with him, but she refuses, fearing that he will learn about Andarna's power. Amber, lacking proof, makes inappropriate accusations against Xaden. At Violet's insistence, Tern telepathically relays Violet's memories of the fight to all in attendance, despite this typically being a violation of Dragon Code. Amber is found guilty and Tern incinerates her. Liam escorts Violet wherever she goes. Despite her resistance to his role as her bodyguard, she likes him well enough. She also witnesses the hostility directed at Liam because he bears the mark of being a rebel's child. During her library duty, Violet learns that Liam and Xaden were both foster children. Liam shares some of the horrors he endured as the child of a rebel, and Violet learns that all children like him are forced to join the Riders Quadrant when they are conscripted. Jacinia gives them their books and a scroll for the daily battle brief. It falls off the cart as they walk, allowing Violet a glimpse of its contents. They attend the battle brief and banter with their classmates before the professor announces that the annual squad battle will have an additional reward. The winning squad will shadow riders on the front lines. The brief then begins, but its information directly contradicts what Violet saw in the scroll. Liam wonders if it was classified and she simply missed the marking. December arrives. Violet continues to train with Imogen and Rhiannon while Liam supervises. Rhiannon, Violet, and Liam discuss Violet's frustrations with Xaden's behavior, though Violet privately admits that her physical attraction to him is growing. Dane has ignored Violet since Amber's death, yet he seems angry when he catches her watching Xaden spar shirtless. During sparring, Rhiannon knocks Violet down, and Jack makes snide comments about her abilities. When Violet reminds him that he ran during the threshing, Jack attacks, but Liam fights him off. As a result, Xaden begins giving Violet instructions on fighting and self-defense. Later that evening, Violet is suddenly overcome by both pain and power. Eventually, the pain recedes, leaving her with seemingly endless energy as she finally begins to channel Tairn's magic. She leaves her room and runs into Liam. When she sees him, an overwhelming wave of lust fills her and she flees, realizing that because Tairn is mating, his emotions are overpowering her own. She encounters Xaden in the halls, and when it becomes clear that Violet cannot handle the emotional onslaught from Tairn, Xaden teaches her how to shield herself from Tairn's thoughts. Although she successfully blocks out the worst of Tairn's emotions, she and Xaden end up kissing. Xaden breaks the kiss, insisting that the desire they feel is not truly theirs and that Violet cannot fully give consent. Violet returns to her room, still feeling her own desire for Xaden, even though Tairn's influence has dissipated from her mind. Violet confides in Rhiannon about what happened. They also discuss what will happen when Xaden graduates, as mated dragons must remain together, making Violet's future uncertain. Rhiannon then reveals her signet power, the ability to summon objects to herself. The cadets head to class where Dane intercepts Violet. He asks why she refused to share her memory with him on the day of Amber's trial, and Violet reminds him that he did not simply ask for the memory, he demanded it. She insists that he acknowledge her capabilities as a rider, and the two reconcile. Now that Violet has access to Tairn's power, she joins Professor Carr's class to learn about magic, even though her own signet has not yet manifested. Referred to as wielding, this style of magic includes minor feats such as locking doors and summoning lights. By January, Violet begins successfully defeating other cadets in sparring challenges. One day she is assigned to fight Jack. She confides in Liam beforehand, warning him that he cannot intervene once the challenge is announced. When they head to the sparring room, Liam begs Violet to let him summon Xaden. She allows it, knowing that Liam will not find him in time. As she and Jack face off, Tairn attempts to give her advice. Violet deliberately provokes Jack, trying to enrage him so he fights recklessly. Their battle intensifies in both speed and brutality until Jack begins using his signet power against her, directly violating the rules. In response, Violet shoves a vial into his mouth, forcing them apart. Riddoch rushes to her aid and she reveals that Jack is allergic to oranges before fainting. She wakes up in the infirmary that night to find Xaden sitting beside her. Xaden tells Violet that Jack survived his allergic reaction before expressing his anger that she kept the fight a secret. She insists that she must prove her own strength. When she brings up their kiss, he refuses to discuss it. He also decides to take over her training. They begin sparring together the next day, and he gives her specially made daggers. Over the next 2 months, Violet still does not manifest her signet, and the power Tairn grants her becomes increasingly uncomfortable. One of their peers fails to manifest a signet in time and dies as a result. One day in March, Xaden takes Violet flying while the rest of the cadets practice magic. As they walk to the flight field, Xaden warns her that she will likely be forced to follow him to the front lines next year. They are interrupted by some of the commanding officers, including Violet's mother. General Sorrengail is cold and reserved. The officers discuss whether they will be able to study Andarna and if Violet knows the location of her father's research notes. Violet withholds all the information she knows. After the officers depart, Xaden seems sympathetic toward Violet, witnessing how her own mother treats her. They reach the training fields where Scale, Andarna, and Tairn approach, and the training continues. Violet's squad cheers Liam on as he wrestles during the squad battle. After he wins, Commandant Panchek announces that the third and final stage of the squad battle will take place immediately, breaking the tradition of holding it the following day. He commands the squads to find and acquire the one thing that would be most advantageous to their enemies regarding the war effort, and present it to leadership within the next 3 hours. Their leading cadets have been sequestered, making each squad responsible for its own planning. Imogen takes command of their squad, and they brainstorm what to steal. When Liam suggests information, Violet gets the idea to break into her mother's office. 2 hours later, the squad creeps up the staircase to General Sorengale's office. One cadet astral projects to distract the guard, while another unweaves the wards surrounding the office. Violet enters with the others while Liam stands watch. She reads some of her mother's letters and realizes they need to steal the map on the wall, which contains detailed information about outposts and supply routes. As they take it, Liam signals that the guard has returned, Rhiannon teleports the map away, and another cadet uses air magic to restrain the guard. They rush to the battle brief room, making it just in time. Imogen has Violet present the map. When she announces where it came from, chaos erupts, but she meets Xaden's eye and can tell that he is impressed. As a reward for winning the squad battle, Violet's squad travels to the front lines to shadow active soldiers. Rhiannon and Violet are given a room to share. Rhiannon reveals that they are less than an hour away from her village. They receive a tour of the fortress. 3 riders return from patrol and Violet sees Mira. They embrace. 2 days later, Mira catches Violet and Rhiannon sneaking out to visit Rhiannon's village. She agrees to accompany them. Mira offers Violet encouragement as they sip wine and watch Rhiannon interact with her family. Violet tells her about the complications with Dane, as well as the ways Xaden has saved her. Mira shares that she kept one of their father's folklore books, hoping to give it to Violet upon graduation, but she promises to give it to her when they return to the outpost. When Violet and Mira step outside, they find Xaden waiting. He had come because the 3-day separation between Tyne and Skyle was too much for the dragons to endure. Xaden's arrival shifts the atmosphere at the fort. The squad flies on patrols and reviews old battles. Mira runs riders through hypothetical battle scenarios, challenging them to strategically use dragons and rider signets. While they do so, Xaden reveals that he can communicate telepathically with Violet because of their dragon's bond. Xaden flirts with and teases Violet without anyone noticing, but Violet struggles to learn how to telepathically reply. During the meeting, Dane verbally attacks Xaden, letting his personal hatred get the better of him. Mira takes Dane, Xaden, and Violet into the hallway after the simulation. She yells at Dane for his petty behavior, then questions Xaden about the mated dragon bond. When Mira makes cruel comments, Violet defends him. Their argument is interrupted by the approach of griffins, and Mira realizes that the wards protecting the fort have fallen. She commands Xaden to get Violet out, though Violet resists. Dane finally convinces her to flee by pointing out that if the other first years do not escape, their lack of training will result in their deaths. Xaden and Violet help the others onto their dragons and out of the fort while they wait for Tyne and Skyle, who have briefly gone to keep the griffins at bay. Violet begs Xaden to let her stay. He kisses her, distracting her long enough for Tyne to arrive and snatch her away in his talons. 2 days pass after the squad returns to the college. Violet neglects her archive duties, waiting instead outside Colonel Markham's office, worried for her sister. Xaden brings her coffee and they wait together. They talk, and he confesses that he is attracted to her. Violet figures out how to speak with him telepathically just as Dane arrives to wait with them. When Colonel Markham arrives, he confirms that Mira survived the attack. Violet goes to the flight field where she holds Andarna and cries with relief. Violet uses her new telepathic bond with Xaden to ask him questions about himself, and they grow close through this telepathic banter. Violet still has not manifested her signet. Meanwhile, the college prepares for the war games, fight simulations meant to prepare the cadets for war and graduation. Violet's squad is tasked with carrying a flag for other teams to try to capture. Other squads of the 4th Wing plan to steal a crystal egg as an additional part of the challenge. The dragons arrive, and Tern is wearing a saddle that Xaden specially designed for Violet's use. Although she sees it as a sign of weakness, he convinces her to use it. As she mounts Tern, she spots Andarna, who wants to participate. The squad takes off and flies defensively to protect the flag. Violet relaxes as she becomes used to the saddle. She becomes aware of Tern's power increasing within her and worries that she may suffer the consequences of failing to manifest her signet. Another squad attacks Violet's group, trying to find the flag. Violet realizes that the squad is defending a tower and deduces that the crystal egg is hidden there. She communicates this idea to Xaden and then sees Liam and his dragon fighting Jack. Tern flies to help Liam, but Jack stabs Liam in the side before they can reach him, and Liam falls. Andarna freezes time so that Tern can catch him before he hits the ground. Enraged, Violet feels her channeling power growing. Tern pursues Jack as she unleashes her magic for the first time, manifesting her signet power and calling down a streak of lightning that sends Jack falling to his death. The 4th Wing successfully retrieves the crystal egg, winning the competition, but Violet is racked with guilt guilt over killing Jack. She dismounts Taryn at the training grounds and confirms that Liam survived. Taryn shields her from view as she vomits. Taryn and Andarna comfort her, insisting that she did what she had to do. Dane arrives and holds Violet, trying to soothe her until Xaden appears. Xaden gives her a starker perspective on Jack's death, asserting that killing him allowed Liam to survive and revealed how her signet power, the lightning, can protect people. He then calls Rhiannon over to escort Violet to her room. That night, Violet throws daggers at a target in her room and Xaden visits her to check on her emotional state. She confides her secret disappointment that her signet power is something so violent. He compares her plight to the feelings of the conscripted rebels' children, all of whom want different lives for themselves but must fight to survive. Violet kisses him. Soon after, Xaden and Violet can't stop themselves from becoming more intimate, and they lose all their inhibitions. They make love, and Violet uses her lightning power several times during their coupling as she has no control. Afterwards, she asks about the scars on his back. He admits that there is one scar for every rebel child who was still alive immediately after the rebellion. As the oldest of the children, he made a deal that he would be personally responsible for their loyalty to the Empire. In exchange, the children would be given the opportunity to serve in the Riders' Quadrant instead of being executed outright. If any of them decides to rebel, he will be killed. Violet convinces him to stay the night. Xaden is gone by the time she wakes up. Professor Carr takes Violet to help her refine her lightning powers so that she will not accidentally hurt someone. When Taryn shows signs of distrust toward Carr, Violet admits that she has been wary of the professor ever since watching him break the mind reader cadet's neck. She and Taryn discuss the importance of controlling information. He also warns Violet to make her loyalties loudly known because she and Xaden would make dangerous adversaries should they choose to stand against Navarre. Violet struggles to manifest her lightning in front of Carr, so Xaden telepathically sends her erotic imagery from the previous night, believing that heightened emotions will allow her to use her power. This tactic works and she learns to use her power without such stimulation. However, she cannot yet aim her lightning. Xaden helps Violet clean her room, and they find the folklore book from Violet's father and discover a letter he wrote to her, but his words are cryptic. Xaden begins to initiate intimacy, but Violet rejects him, stating that they will not make love until he admits that he has feelings for her beyond simple lust. This makes it difficult for him, and he leaves. A month passes. Violet's accuracy with her lightning does not improve, but her stamina does. Xaden and Violet continue to practice sparring together, which causes the sexual tension between them to mount as neither of them budges. The 6-year anniversary of Brennan's death arrives, causing Violet to ruminate on all she has lost. The day of his death is also Reunification Day, a celebration of the end of the rebellion. The cadets are required to wear dress uniforms and attend a party at which King Tauri, other students in the War College, and the commanding officers are waiting to celebrate. However, Violet realizes that Liam is the only rebel child in attendance. She remembers that Reunification Day is also the day many rebels were executed, so from the rebel children's perspective, the event is a celebration of their parents' deaths. Violet and Liam are approached by the king, her mother, and General Melgren. They have an uncomfortable conversation about power. Melgren questions Xaden's loyalty and puts pressure on Liam. Violet defends Xaden but is instructed to warn the generals if she suspects that Xaden is a traitor. Violet and Liam leave the party shortly thereafter. Violet seeks Xaden and finds his friends instead. They warn her not to go to him, but she continues her search, eventually stepping out onto the parapet that she has not seen since her first day. Violet spots Xaden and is filled with empathy, perceiving that he mourns the death of his father. She realizes that she is in love with him and attempts to cross the parapet to him, fighting the wind. Xaden spots her and drags her to safety, furious that she has put herself in reckless danger. She confesses her feelings for him and outlines her desire for a relationship. Xaden gives up staying away from her. She convinces him to get off the parapet, discouraging him from mourning alone. She takes him to his room and admits that she loves him. They make love. Their evening is interrupted when Garrick, one of Xaden's friends, arrives and reports that an attack is occurring. Shaken by news of the attack, Violet and Xaden scramble to get dressed and join flight formation. Xaden gives her a jacket to put on over her dress uniform. When she joins her friends, Rhiannon immediately identifies the jacket. They head to the courtyard and Xaden telepathically shares that they have been dragged out of bed for the last event of the war games, not for an actual attack. Rhiannon helps Violet hide the jacket from Dane before Commandant Panchek begins to speak. Dane's father, General Sorengale's secretary, gives orders to each wing leader. Xaden is ordered to select riders to be stationed with him outside the borders of the Empire, where they will remain for 5 days. Dane is assigned to a different outpost within the kingdom's wards to take his squad of first years. The cadets quickly pack and prepare for the long flight. Liam is unusually tense. Violet spots Andarna and grows concerned with her ability to keep up and hide during the fights to come, then sees a harness she is wearing that can hook to Tern, allowing him to carry her easily. Xaden approaches and claims both Liam and Violet for his team. Dane pushes back, leading to a fight that ends with Dane realizing their relationship. Xaden's group crosses the wards and leaves the Empire, nearing the Athabine outpost. During a break, Liam and Violet commiserate over the fact that they are the only first years in the group. Xaden takes Violet into the forest for a moment of privacy. They are found by Griffin Flyers, the supposed enemies, who taunt Xaden and recognize Violet. Xaden hides them in shadow until reinforcements arrive. When Violet is about to attack the Flyers, Xaden stops her, approaching them and accusing them of being early, indicating that he is close to them. The Flyers warn Xaden that a horde of Venin attacked one of their villages. Violet is shocked, both by the mention of Venin and the clear collaboration between their squad and the enemy Griffin Flyers. One of the Flyers contemplates taking Violet hostage for ransom. Xaden threatens them in turn. The Flyers leave. Violet surveys the squad and realizes that all the fighters except her are children of the Separatists. When she points this out to Tern and Andarna, she discovers that they both knew the Dragon Riders were interacting with the Griffin Flyers but kept it a secret because of Tyrn's bond with Skyle. Xaden commands the rest of the squad to leave as Violet's control of her signet power starts to slip because of her anger. When Violet accuses Xaden of treason for working with the Flyers, he tells her that they have allied to fight the Venin. If you remember, Venin are evil beings or spirits mentioned in her late father's folklore books. Basically, they are considered myths. Xaden explains that the dragon-powered wards around Navarre prevent them from entering the Empire, but the surrounding areas are vulnerable to attack. Xaden tells her that the government of Navarre knows about the Venin, but does nothing. The Griffin attacks along the border have been in search of weapons for self-defense. Xaden insists that he kept this secret from Violet because Dane might see her memory and report Xaden's efforts to command. Xaden gives her a rune-inscribed dagger that is enchanted to fight against Venin. Although Violet claims to no longer love or trust him, she believes his story. They return to the squad and continue their flight. As they fly, Tern, Andarna, and Violet discuss the lie. Tern feels deeply guilty about his deception and apologizes. Violet tries to logic her way through the reconciliation of truth and fiction, concluding that the kingdom truly has been hiding its knowledge of the Venin. They arrive at their assigned outpost to find no riders waiting for them. The Athabine outpost is the most strategic garrison manned by the Empire, and the fact that it is empty does not bode well because the army would never have emptied it of riders for the war games. Xaden asks Violet whether Dane has ever touched her face. She confirms this, claiming it is how he always touches her. Xaden realizes that Dane has been reading Violet's memories without her knowledge. Meanwhile, Garrick discovers a letter from Dane's father that instructs them to survive if they can. The squad gathers on the battlements. Xaden reads the rest of the letter and tells the group that they have a choice. If they flee and save themselves, the nearest trading post and its occupants will be killed. Liam, using his gift of farsight, sees 4 Venin approaching the village. Griffin Flyers arrive. Their leader, the same woman who confronted them by the lake, tells them to leave. They learn that 2 Venin were able to destroy a Poromale city the month before, so facing 4 now would be a death sentence. She leaves to command her group, and Xaden and the other riders decide to stay. Violet commands Andarna to hide and to flee if Violet dies. As they prepare, they see a creature fly overhead. Only Violet realizes that it is a wyvern, a 2-legged flying reptile created by the Venin to fight dragons. Xaden gives her a second rune-inscribed dagger and tells her that General Melgren, whose gift is to see the future, cannot see the rebel children because of their separatist relics. He promises to tell her all his secrets if they survive. The riders head to the trading outpost. Violet and Tern fight Venin and wyverns. Xaden finds a cave and starts an evacuation procedure for the civilians. Violet tries to cover with her lightning but cannot aim properly. 6 wyverns target Violet. She and Tern lead them away from the city, using her lightning to draw attention. Liam and his dragons sacrifice themselves to save Violet and Tern. Violet and Liam share a tearful farewell. Xaden arrives to say his goodbyes, which are interrupted by the arrival of dozens of wyverns. Before Liam dies, he reveals that there are 2 venin riders among them. Xaden decides to distract them while Violet devotes herself to killing them. As they take to the air, something injures Tarn. A venin stabs a sword into Tarn and keeps her grip as they climb. Violet unbuckles herself from her saddle to engage in hand-to-hand combat. The venin breaks her arm and stabs her with a poison dagger, but Violet uses lightning and a dagger to kill the venin. Many of the wyverns die along with her. Violet, after watching the venin leader vanish, convinces Xaden to drop his shadow protections, holding the wyverns back from attacking her. She pushes herself to the limit of what she can do with Tyrn's ability. Andana helps Violet stop time as she channels Tyrn's power, killing one of the remaining venin and taking out half of the remaining wyverns. Xaden kills the final venin, and Violet loses consciousness as she falls off Tyrn. Andana stops time and rescues Violet. Xaden holds her as she faints again. She comes to consciousness in time to hear the rest of the squad discussing her condition. Her blood has turned black and she is paralyzed, unable to mentally reach out to Xaden, Tarn, or Andarna due to the poison dagger wound. The riders debate the 12-hour flight to get her to medical attention at the college. Xaden decides to take her somewhere closer, although some of his squad members warn him of the risks. Violet comes in and out of consciousness in intense pain as the poison spreads. She hears a familiar voice but cannot place who it belongs to. Until now, the novel's point of view was from Violet's eyes. Now it shifts to Xaden in the final chapter. Ascale comforts Xaden when 3 days later Violet has not yet awakened. He is also overwhelmed by grief and guilt over Liam's death. Tarn adds to his shame by reiterating that Xaden should have told Violet the truth sooner. Xaden ruminates on the development of their relationship and regrets keeping Violet in the dark for so long. Violet awakens and he rushes to check her wound, which has become a silver scar over the last 3 days. Although initially happy and gentle, she quickly remembers the events from days prior. Xaden tries to comfort her, hiding that Andarna has grown now and lost her gift. Violet looks out the window, surveying the scarred remnants of a destroyed city. She recognizes the location as the Tyrrhish capital Aretia, a city her own mother helped to sack. After confirming that Liam is dead and has been put to rest, Violet kicks Xaden out of the room. He speaks with his friends about the flyers who escaped the venin and the iron box they discovered in the remnants of the trade outpost, which they believed to be the venin's goal. Xaden bathes and reconvenes with Garrick before going to Violet. Violet agrees to fight with them but rejects Xaden's advances, no longer trusting him. Xaden tells her that he loves her and that he believes she loves him too. She does not deny this. He promises to tell her everything and swears to earn her trust. Violet asks if it is possible that they were at the outpost accidentally. The door opens behind them and the person entering asserts that it was intentional. Xaden steps aside and Violet beholds her brother Brennan, who warmly welcomes her to the revolution. The fourth Wing novel ends here. We see various twists and turns in this novel, with trust and betrayal circling each other as Violet is betrayed by the figures who make up the central pillars of her growth and development. Most notably, Dane and Xaden both break her trust in drastically different ways. Dane is revealed to have manipulated Violet, using his signet against her without her knowledge. His decision to do so reinforces his deep distrust of Xaden and his unwillingness to honor Violet's personal growth. He forcibly invades her mind and steals knowledge of her memories because some part of him desires a say in who she will become as a rider. His command of her memories is an extension of his earlier efforts to send her to the scribes, for he performs all of these actions repeatedly and without her consent. His unscrupulous actions make it clear that he does not follow a moral code and instead aligns himself with the kingdom rather than with humankind in general. In some ways, Xaden represents a problematic manifestation of the other half of this theme, for his alignment with his personal morals supersedes his obedience to Navarre's laws, and thus he betrays Violet by withholding critical information from her. His choice to do so is a different violation of her consent, as he prevents her from making her own informed decisions about their relationship and her own place within the kingdom. Although he has clear reasons for restricting her knowledge, his violation harms her trust even more than Dane's because of how closely their interests already align. Violet has proven time and time again that she follows a moral perspective. She shows herself to be trustworthy, and it is Xaden's failure to see her intentions clearly. We also get questions regarding who all know know about the existence of Venin and wyverns? Is Violet's mom involved too? It also looks like her father had some knowledge as well. Let me know if you want me to cover the other parts of this series, as we have Iron Flame and the recently launched Onyx Storm 2. So that's it for today's video. Do like and share the video and comment about your opinions. Make sure to subscribe to our channel as well. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.